Hello, investors. This is Todd Thomas, Associate Portfolio Manager with Revere Asset Management. Today is Saturday, July 26th. The time is 11:47 a.m. Coming to you from Boca Raton, Florida to bring you the Revere Roundup weekend walkthrough. Overall on the week, another strong week of record highs with strong breadth toward the end of the week. Going through the weekly numbers, the Big Eight, which is the Mag 7 plus Netflix, was up 0.57 or 51%. Buoyed by Google's earnings this week, but also taken down a little bit by Tesla. The RG8, which is the Revere Growth composite of 8 growth ETFs, was up 0.91%. The S&P 500 was up 1.46%, but the equal weight performed better at 1.93%. NASDAQ 100 was up 0.91, but the NASDAQ 100 equal weight performed better at 1.40%. Dow was also up 1.26, mids 1.47, small caps up 0.94, 60/40 portfolio up 1.08. And standing out once again this week, GROTECTION with a 2.59% gain and Turbo with a 3.07% gain. State of the market, 4 up green arrows. We continue to monitor medium-term 50-day moving average with a cautionary sign, and that is because we're around, not quite, but around that 5% extension from the 50-day, which is historically extended. However, we have not been able to really pull back much from that, and we're holding steadily above the ADMA. What happened last week? Both the NASDAQ and the S&P hit all new weekly highs. The S&P logged 50 straight record closing sessions and is now up 4 of the past 5 weeks. Growth leaders sell off sharply on Tuesday morning, but quickly bounced back. Trade developments took place with the U.S. reaching agreements with Japan, Indonesia, the Philippines, with hopes of an EU deal ahead. Earnings season kicked off in full force. Notable earnings came out from Google, Tesla, GEV, MEDP. Google raised their CapEx spending from $75 billion to $85 billion, sending the AI and chip complex up on the week. Trump also unveiled plans to ensure the U.S. leads the world in AI tech, and he listed 90 federal policy actions. IBIT and Bitcoin shook out to the 21-day moving average on Friday, holding that key moving average. Weekly winners and losers, as always, and coming from the IBD, TSS, which is a smaller name, up 24%. FIX, a nice gap up on earnings in the AC space, which cools data centers, up 24%. A-Lab up 19.8%, a nice follow through with the Trump push toward accelerating AI. AGX in the building area up 14.2%, and AEM, several gold miners acted well this week. Veritiv continuing its gain after a nasty shakeout to the 50-day, showing strength. Celestica has been a leader. Train, another cooling stock, and BZ in the China area. Overall, the losses were muted in some of the bigger gains from the previous weeks, with OUST down 14.2 being the worst. Of the tech leaders, these are just some names. Bloom Energy appeared on the list this week after Oracle signed a deal with them to use BE's fuel cells for their new data centers. And Credo continued its strength, as well as some of the other names, DoorDash, SE, and WDC. Big earnings week ahead with several notable names here that I've highlighted, including Cadence Designs, Nextracker, SoFi, Spotify, Seagate, ARM, Carvana, eBay, Lam Research, Meta, Microsoft of the Mag 7, Veritiv also coming out with earnings, Train, another AC play, Apple, one of the Mag 7, Amazon, so big week for the Mag 7, CCJ in the uranium area, Coinbase, and Mastech, Cloudflare, Roblox, Reddit. On the heat map for the week, Tesla was down 4% on earnings. Palantir continued gaining to new highs, up 3.4%. AMD stood out in the chip area, up 6%. IBM down 9% on earnings. Google up 4% on earnings. T-Mobile up 7% on earnings. AT&T, Verizon up nicely on earnings. GEV, the big standout, with a 12% gain on the week on earnings. train and car in the AC area. Philip Morris down 9% on disappointing numbers. Thermo Fisher and Danaher looking good, and Eli Lilly. And overall, semiconductors were down 2.10% despite the strength in AMD, and that's because of weak numbers out of Texas Instruments. Texan got hit pretty bad this past week. Gold miners up 5.54% with Newmont breaking out on earnings. And the international market showed strength this week, especially Japan with a U.S.-Japanese trade deal looking better. Huge economic week ahead, including the consumer confidence number. We've got the Fed meeting this upcoming week. The employment numbers are coming out. Personal income, personal spending, the Fed's coveted PCE price gauge, which they like for the inflation, as well as the PMI and construction spending, ISM, and University of Michigan consumer sentiment. So huge week on the economic front, which should see some potential volatility in the bond market. Now going to the charts. Focusing mostly on the weekly, since this is the weekly review. We already talked about the indexes, but you can see the S&P once again closed up at a new all-time high. The equal weight still not quite breaking through that pivot of 188.16. Basically closed just shy of that. Again, we did see better breadth as these equal weight indexes outperformed the cap weighted indexes, mostly because of earnings in the Mag 7. Q another high, equal weights, all-time high on the Q equal weights. And you can see that's just very nice. Bounced off the 21 EMA back here, but continuing to ride the 80 EMA the last couple of weeks. Dow, just shy of all-time highs here, but looking tight. Mid caps continuing to maintain their position above the 200-day moving average and closing out at the highest weekly close in several months. Russell also tight, but not much progress on the week. VIX down into the 14s now, broke the 15 level, so volatility is contracting. The dollar was relatively down on the week, 0.81, and again, off those lows of a couple of weeks ago. Gold was down 0.3% on the week. The gold miners were up 5.5% on the week as gold stocks outperformed. Silver down, well, actually flat on the week, but still maintaining its nice run. An IBIT down 0.5% after a test of that 21-day moving average, as well as an undercut of this shelf that it's been in since the gap up 2 weeks ago. So that's very promising and a potential entry area if you're not already in it. Bond market was up as yields backed off a little bit. And the TLT, which is the 20-year bond prices, up 1.4%. 30-year yields down, still coming off that 5% area, now at 4.929%. And the 10-year yields dropped also down to 4.386%. So that's in the right direction. We will see next week. The Fed is not expected to lower rates in this particular meeting, so we'll see if there's any policy shift. And then the Mag 7 here, going into the Apple on the week, up 1.28% in line with the S&P. Amazon was up 2.3%, making recent weekly highs here with a gap up on Friday, holding nicely. Still not exactly leading the market. Microsoft right around the new all-time closing high, slightly up on the week. Meta up 1.19%, just consolidating. NVIDIA up slightly, 0.63 to the new closing weekly high. Alphabet stand out at 4.39% on earnings this week, still forming this stage one cut base as it undercut this previous base. Looking good here and did gap up and fade a little bit, but came back in on the second day. Again, they announced a $10 billion increase in their capex, and we'll see in the watch list coming up here, several names that broke out on that. Netflix down another week at down 2.3% now, below the 50-day moving average. And finally, Tesla with earnings down 4.12%. After trying to maintain above all the moving averages, gap down below all the averages and got rejected at the 200-day. So still some work to do there, but overall, Musk said there was going to be several potential rough quarters ahead as the EV credit of $7,500 ends in September, at the end of September of this year. Also, they plan on announcing, or they announced they're on track for the lower cost option and said it was going to look like the Model Y, which the market didn't particularly take well. But overall, just forming this kind of still lower highs and higher lows coming to a head to be determined. We'll probably see a break to the upside or the downside, depending on what happens. Going to the watch list on the week. And so many names out there. I've just outright sorted them by composite rating, and I'm going to go through it relatively fast. Uranium and nuclear plays another weekly gain. CCJ just riding the ADMA. CLS a leader in the data center contract manufacturing, supplying several networkers in that area. Another 6% gain. So very strong follow through there on the administration's announcements. Taiwan Semi following through slightly at post earnings last week. Credo, nice comeback up 8% after getting shaken down below the 21 EMA earlier here in the week, giving another entry opportunity in the strong name after this nice earnings gap, undercut of the earnings, and then now nicely riding up along this 21 EMA here. There's some concentration amongst their customers, Microsoft being, I believe, their largest customer at 60%. You can see triple-digit sales, triple-digit earnings, classic canceling characteristics. Palantir, just a monster, up another 3.4%. Just riding the wave in that one for GROTECTION. AMD, up huge on the week, up 6%. And looking like a potential leader right now in the AI semiconductor space with earnings coming out the week after next. So this one looks extremely attractive. Again, had a nice little shake here on Tuesday morning below the ADMA, but again, all leaders that do shake out intraday tend to show strength by closing at or back above that 8. And we've seen that in a few different examples here as we go through the list. Voodoo Holdings, leader in China, had a decent week again after a big week the week before, up 1.8%. LPLA probably shouldn't even be on the list. SE shouldn't be on the list. DoorDash, after a 4 or 5 week tight, broke through that on Friday and up 4.49% on the week, with earnings coming out the week after next. So very tight action there, and new all-time closing highs, but still not all-time highs. Robinhood backing off a little bit on slightly lighter volume, down 4.46% as Bitcoin backed off a little bit this week. Got extended, but really holding that ADMA, which it's been doing right along. So very good action there. Viva Systems broke out of this nice little shelf pattern on Friday, pulled back a little bit into it. Earnings not for a month now, but again, very tight action in Viva. Airgain Construction, data center company, huge week, up 14% on the administration announcements. Again, we're in a very power-hungry world, and companies like GEV, the nuclear names, are just leading the market right now, and Airgain is part of that complex. Sprouts has earnings this week, and it's in a tight flat base, basically. Again, a flat base is defined as a 15% or lower, so this isn't showing up as a flat base, but you might as well say it is. With a nice supporting day there, but this could potentially be a mover on earnings. Newmont Mining's with a breakout in gold, leading the gold stocks higher. Next tracker with earnings next week. This stock has had a tendency to have some nice earnings gaps here. starting with this monster earnings gap back here, but with the administration's, uh, cutting back on green energy subsidies, this thing was not able to follow through during the last quarter, held this nice 31% consolidation, but then had another monster earnings gap up in earnings. So we've got some BCP going on here with some tightening going into earnings. So we'll see what happens here. But this has been a company that has had a couple nice beats in a row. Power, another electric power company in the contracting area. Again, you can see up 4%. That area showing strength. I'll go up 2.4%. Toast following through after this choppy consolidation and finally breaking out. Up 4.6% on the week. Seagate with a little opportunity here in this 4-week tight consolidation. Holding the ADMA and definitely has been a leader in the storage area. AVAV backing off 0.4%. Again, pretty much closing right in around that ADMA after this big secondary offering. Looking pretty good here. Veritiv has earnings this upcoming week. Again, this was a name that showed 5.5 billion in new mutual fund buys in June. This shakeout was quickly bought up and then another shakeout below the 21 EMA. Again, high expectations going into earnings and extremely strong accumulation signs going into earnings as well. Rambus down 7% with earnings up this week. IREN had a big day on Monday, reversed. And again, this was building a nice high tight flag. That looked pretty nice, but it just got sold into pretty hard. A little disappointing, but overall down 1% on the week on a major rejection, but still holding above these key levels right here. So that's 16, high 15s, low 16 areas key here, as this really still isn't a high tight flag, but it's definitely a negative on the reversal. Carvana heading into earnings this upcoming week, right on the 10-week moving average. So in the 50-day moving average here, it's been an earnings mover as well. Cruiser's doing well. LEU backed off pretty hard. Not even getting quite to the 21-day moving average, though, as these stocks have just been a monster. This is a big stock in the enriched uranium, really the only one in the United States. Big holding in TurboTection, and Ted and Connor have talked a lot about this name. Very strong. Cloudflare with earnings this upcoming week. Pretty much the only security stock looking good right now, and close to its highs as the others have sold off. Shot backed off 2% after breaking out of this cup with extended handle formation, but did shake out on Tuesday or Wednesday close to the 21 EMA and held. So decent close on the week, and this one looks pretty good. NetEase and China down slightly. SoFi with earnings coming up this coming week, but looking very good and approaching these old highs back from 2021. ANET grinding higher still as a new stage 2 uptrend in this long-term leader. ALAB just a huge week, up 19%. Again, like Toast, had several of these reversals off the high, finally came back up here, held for 3 days and had a huge gap. I don't believe there was really any news on it, but this is a big data center networking player with massive triple-digit sales, still strong, but decelerating a little bit, and earnings starting to decelerate a little bit, but nonetheless, price is truth, and this thing looks great. Schwab continued with a 1.3% gain. ARM Holdings with earnings next week. Again, pretty tight here, and potentially taking a stand against these all-time highs this week. We'll see. EMCOR is a big electrical construction company, and again, huge beneficiary of this build-out that's coming in our power grid. You can see new all-time highs here on the week, up 12%. Kratos Defense, tight week after the breakout the previous couple of weeks on the administration's movement to increase drone productions. V1 Medicines, tight week after this attempt to break through a consolidation. Herein, tight week after strength. Earnings coming out in a few weeks here, but up 0.5%. Snowflake tight coming into earnings this week. Hammer Sports may be tight for too long, but I suspect the stock may wait until the next earnings report to make a move since it is a newer IPO name, but holding tightly and held the 50-day moving average this week. Light, one of the leaders, probably the biggest leaders in the LiDAR area and the optical components, as well as photonics, just really grinding nicely, up 2.25%. This is a holding for Toddzilla. I've been in this since this breakout back here, and it's treated me well. Had a couple trips to the 21-day moving average, but looking pretty strong, and volume is showing accumulation across the board. NRG, another Toddzilla holding. Bought this as a cross back above the 50-day moving average last week. Gapped open on Talon Energy, as well as the administration's push to or allowing for power price increases. So again, kind of reverse back, but as long as this thing's holding the 21 EMA or the 80 EMA here, this big confluence, I'm going to stick with this here for at least the next week. King's Design comes out with earnings this week. This is a big AI software chip company trading real. You know what? That's a terrible line I just drew. Let's make that a little better. Breaking through a couple years worth of congestion here. Definitely has gotten a lot tighter up here and broke through the pivot. Earnings coming out on Monday, and this is one to watch. This is a company that's definitely agentic AI. They help develop the chips as well as the processes. So very, very good long-term leader here. 10-cent Music back on the list, continuing to make new highs. Hinge Health, this is an IPO I continue to watch. Held the 21 EMA, very, very choppy here. As time goes on, I suspect this will settle down some. It basically had a 4-week tight coming into the week, only down about 2.5%, but still holding this breakout of the IPO base. About 24% deep, so all these are relatively tight for IPOs. Coinbase down 6% on the week. Kind of a rough week, closing just below the 80 EMA. Still holding on to my position in this stock, because I was able to buy it pretty well off of this 8 EMA pullback. So as long as that stays above the 21, I'm going to ride that wave. Affirm is another stock, just keeping an eye on. Flutter, Oklo, huge week, up 9.45%. Definitely them, CCJ, LEU, leaders in the nuclear space. You know, folks, power. We haven't even really started building out the power for the AI data center yet. GEV, okay, their backlog goes out to 2028 for natural gas turbines. Okay, very, very little of that is for data centers at this point. Okay, the data center build out for power is just getting started, and natural gas is going to be the bridge fuel for that. GEV makes, they're the leading manufacturer of the natural gas turbines. They also have their hand in the small modular nuclear reactors. We'll get into GEV, but nuclear is going to be the next major fuel that everything eventually transitions to. And you can see it. The administration's pushing for it through their executive orders, and everything looks great there. Oracle, another Toddzilla holding here. Bought on this post-earnings gap tightness on the pullback to the 80 EMA. Again, just a little quieter name, but definitely riding this EMA, this 80 EMA, and they're definitely one of the big cap leaders in AI. eBay broke out this week. SMCI, definitely relative strength improving here, and a cheaper stock, but they need to gain some credibility on Wall Street. So we'll see. Earnings are coming out the week after next. Life 360 continues its push higher after a big IPO breakout. Eaton is another power Manufacturer of power lines, control equipment, also uh, transformers, I believe, up 3.5%. Break out of a nice stage one cup with handle here this week. 39% deep handle broke out here, just continue to go. Capital One reversal this week. GE Verona after earnings up 12%. This thing, again, a Toddzilla holding as well as a GROTECTION holding. This is one of the stocks as well as Robinhood that both Don and myself bought post follow through day here and have just been riding this thing. It's just been definitely one of the liquid leaders. And again, CEO saying that they're booked out to 2028 with data center business just really starting. NuScale, another nuclear name with a 2.8% gain. Shark Ninja, new all-time closing weekly high here coming into earnings a week after next. Somebody might have the word here that this is going to be a good quarter, or at least going into the holiday season. Not sure what their new products are, but this is definitely an innovative company in the consumer product area. Continuing to watch AppLovin as it's just trading tight now for 2 weeks straight. And we talked about this pattern of higher lows and higher highs just kind of riding this upward channel. A break through the upper end of this channel on volume would get me involved in this name. MEDP with just a huge earnings gap. Didn't even really look at this quarter, but it was a 40-something% gap. And this stock has had a tendency to do this. You can see back here, had a big gap down, had this kind of shake out and gap up here, and this big gap up back here. But this kind of, this is notable on this name. Obviously, a very strong quarter, a new all-time closing weekly high here, although not quite an all-time high, although it did make it in our week. But definitely a notable situation with pretty much the biggest volume of stocks traded in years. So I'm going to have to look into this name a little more fundamentally. TKO with earnings coming out in 2 weeks. This is a name, again, that's just kind of very strong numbers. I keep watching. Just kind of slight downtrend channel on lower volume. I would, definitely entertain a buy in this if it broke that downtrend line on volume. Synchrony Financial, just a stock that I kept screening up, and it kept coming up on a lot of my screens, up 4% on the week. Mirion Technologies, this is an adjunct play on the nuclear area with detection. All areas, all reactors need their products, and this could be a stock that goes and it's making new all-time highs. DraftKings tight. Zillow Group, a name in the housing area, up 5% with earnings coming out in 2 weeks. BWX Technologies broke out this week. Talked about this name quite a bit. It's been a little bit slower than a lot of the other nuclear names, but got real tight here. Looking at the weekly, multiple tight weekly closes here and broke through the highs here. They're a government contractor. They make reactors for submarines and ships, as well as small modular reactors. So it's definitely a name to watch. Rocket Lab pulled back this week pretty hard. Symbotic down 2.8%, but up 36% on the month. You had huge earnings reaction and follow through earnings in 11 days. Definitely a leader in robotics. Constellation Energy, a gas power producer, up 1.8%, looking tight. Galaxy, this is a name that I like the looks of a lot. 35% IPO based, beautiful breakout, and all-star CEO Sam Altman, I believe, and just one of the leaders in crypto. So this is a data center crypto play and looks extremely attractive. Reddit bouncing off the 10-week moving average with earnings this coming week. Freeport McMoran and Don used the 60 Stowe cross to get into this name this week with 2 ads. both Wednesday and Friday. So again, the leading U.S. copper producer. U.S. has 50% tariffs on copper. They also produce gold and other minerals. Just trading up along this 21 EMA with big earnings ahead, up 43% for 2026. So this name looks great. Roku just riding the trend. This is another rare earth and uranium miner making a new high. We previewed this a few times here and last week, up 7%. CRCL down 13%, kind of a wild play in the Bitcoin space. MP Materials with a nice quiet week. Again, the administration did a private deal, private public partnership with them, funded them for $400 million, guaranteed 10 years of a floor price on all their magnet production, and Apple signed a deal with them. So this one just looks phenomenal. Nice high type flag in development. GROTECTION took a position in this week. This thing is definitely a name to watch, as the administration is guaranteeing them at least double pricing for 10 years with a floor that was double of the previous prices. Huge all-time high breakout last week. Tight close this week. ASTS down 6%. I believe they had a secondary announcement after the close. I'm not sure. ENVX in the battery space, just keeping an eye on this rubric. Not much going on here, but still just kind of trading tight around that 50-day moving average. Would definitely want to see some power here, but it's doing a pretty good job just tightly trading right around that 84 area. So still losing money, but should start to make money after next year. Talent Energy with a 5.4% follow through. Nano Nuclear up 11%. Beautiful week there. Unity Software, a name that I try to pull back by on this week, right down here. And I'll ultimately use a stop if it breaks these lows, or if it can't go over the next few days. This is an example where I'm going to use a time stop. I'm down about 1% in it. But again, this is a big monthly gainer, up 35% on the month. Big turnaround play. Traditionally, gaming software. However, I do see where Gavin Baker now has this as his third largest position. And he's an all-star Fidelity analyst that now manages his own fund. AMD is the second largest position, and A-Lab is his number one position. So when he does something, I tend to watch it and look for a potential entry. And you can see this broke through on a Jeffries upgrade last week. And just going to see if it holds this area. Rocket companies up 7%. This is a mortgage player. Housing is an area we're definitely watching if rates keep going lower. And that is it for the weekend review. Thank you for listening to this weekend's walkthrough. If you would like to become a client of Revere, please give us a call at 855-REAL-WEALTH, or reach out to me at Todd@RevereAsset.com. My Twitter handle is ToddMichael70. Likes, shares, and reposts are appreciated. Have a great week for the upcoming week ahead.